Our last thinker to be taken up in this series of lessons on modern interpretations of human nature is the philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant is interesting to us for a variety of reasons. The first that I want to mention, as we've kind of framed Kant, who is a very complex thinker, has to do with his argument that he thought that philosophy should be moral. One thing that's important to remember about Kant in his development is just how much he aspired toward a understanding of Rousseau and an implementation of Rousseau's idea that for philosophy to be helpful to the world, it must produce a more moral world. How did Rousseau believe this was going to take place? Rousseau wanted to deconstruct all philosophy before the modern world. Much like Machiavelli and much in the vein of Machiavelli, he suggests that we ought to move beyond the ancient truths, the truths of Plato, the truths of Aristotle, the truths of the medieval world, but move toward what? A new positing of what human nature can be. A positing of what human nature can be that is positive. We move from a savage man that was originally innocent and somewhat good to the devastation that's produced over time as the world becomes more and more unequal due to our self-love. So Kant, in line with Rousseau, wants to make philosophy moral. How does he make philosophy moral? Well, he suggests that we ought to look at philosophy and we ought to look at human beings in the following way. I've already mentioned these categories before, so let's use them once again. We have the category of the transcendent. We have the category of that world that is almost beyond our understanding, and we have the category of the immanent. What Machiavelli instructed us to do is to give up trying to understand the world of the transcendent, a world that he believed was the world of the ought. What he suggested in its place is that we ought to focus on life as we see it, the immanent world as the world actually is. Don't act according to the ought, act according to the is. So what does Kant do with Machiavelli's construct? He does something really interesting. He actually inverts Machiavelli's construct, and he says the following. The world of the transcendent is the world as it actually is. It's a world that we don't have a complete ability as human beings to understand. Kant calls this the noumenal world. The noumenal world of the transcendent is the way that God sees the world. Now, the human mind has categories within it, space and time, cause and effect, whereby it can understand that noumenal world, but our understanding of theoretical knowledge will always have its limitations. So if the world of noumena has limitations, what about the world of phenomena? And here's what Kant says. This is the world that is right in front of us and where we can develop a good understanding of it. We can come to understand the world of phenomena by doing what? By applying ought to all of our actions. What is the categorical imperative, right, that must form the basis of all of our actions? It's an imperative that is based upon a maxim of duty. How ought we to live relative to one another? And we ought to only live in a way where we would make something a truth, a duty, an imperative, if we would make it a universal law of others. Now here, note what Kant has done here. Machiavelli is often famous for saying, the means justify the ends. What Kant is actually saying is that human ends justify the moral ends of society within this world of phenomena. What we must do is what we would do unto another. So are there certain things that we would never do to ourselves? We wouldn't ask them to be a universal rule for others. The most important thing to take from Kant, thus, is in this kind of conflict between whether we are individualistic beings or social beings. What Kant suggests is more than anything, the individual should only apply rules to society that he or she would apply to himself. If we understand that aspect of Kant's thought, we're moving in the right direction of trying to figure out how he can make philosophy more moral.